Well, it's already late July. I'm gonna be planting the brassicas today into the no-till buckwheat. I got 5 different spots I'm gonna show you in this video. So that's pretty much all my no-till brassicas at the farm this year. It will all be included in this one video. So it'll probably be kind of a longer video, but I'm gonna try and just get a couple time lapses of seeding, time lapses of crushing all the buckwheat down, and then I'll have like 1 or 2 updates of all these plots at the end of the video. So I'm using a similar blend as last year. Basically just solid winter greens with all that brown seed is the tillage radish mixed in. That tillage radish seed is from last year. So I probably won't get the greatest germination on it, which is fine. That tillage radish is pretty much frosted out and gone and done. Like rotting off by like late December usually. It's mainly just like an early season, like September, October, and then usually by middle of November even it's starting to, I mean they've pretty much switched over to all the forage rape and kales. The winter greens blend doesn't have as much purple top turnips, which is fine because here I got all this corn and soybeans, winter grain. I don't need the turnip bulbs for winter, like late winter attraction. These forage rape and kales, the big green leafy, and I've noticed they don't even eat on the leaves of the turnip plants. They just eat the turnip later on in the year. The brassica, the main leaves that they eat are on these forage rape and kale plants. And that's what this winter greens blend is. It's like 75% just straight greens. It's no brassica bulbs. It's the straight like big leafy greens, which is usually the main attraction from like mid-October till then on. And like I said, the tillage radish is good early, so I want to get some tillage radish in here, but not too much. But anyways, let's seed this. I got a lot of seeding and crushing to do here in the next couple hours, and then spraying later today. So yeah, let's get it done. I'm gonna do a quick check for seed spacing. 1 right there, a couple right there, 2 right there, nothing, 1, 2. So it's plenty thick. And you can see all these little lamb's quarters weeds in here under the buckwheat. I mean, the buckwheat is expensive seed, but it does, especially when you get it in, this is about perfect spacing right here, where there's some thin spots in here. The weeds are a little bit bigger, but still not too big. This stuff grows faster than weeds. I mean, this was all, I just disked this up and then spread it and disked it in with all these buckwheat spots I'm gonna plant today. It was just tilled and then disked in the seed. And this stuff just came up and man, it just grows so fast. Well, that's just pretty much one pass on everything. You can see in the areas the buckwheat was thin, there definitely is a good amount of weeds in here. Good thing these lamb's quarters plants usually kill if you mix up the Roundup kind of strong. If that was water hemp, that wouldn't kill. I'm not seeing any water hemp in this plot. And our ground here is a kind of a pretty sandy loam, especially in this plot. It's a really sandy soil. And man, the first inch of soil is just completely loosened up, which is good. I bet you like over half, if not 75% or more, of these seeds are worked into the ground at like the perfect depth, like a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, just in the soil a little bit. That should really help our germination and really help the seeds from not being washed out if we do get a real heavy rain. They should stick in place at their proper placement, not, you know, when the rain washes them into these ruts, into these low spots like this. But yeah, it's looking good. So this right here is the next spot. It's kind of just a couple Brassica trails. And I got corn walls for screening and the soybeans over there. And then solid NutriCrave right here in front of the blind. And then another little Brassica trail going this way. All right, so here's the third spot. This is probably some of the thickest and tallest buckwheat that I have out of all the spots. And there's like not a weed in here. This used to be all buckthorn. I had hand cleared some of it, and the rest of it got cleared out like, I think 2 years ago. Still just a small, probably, I don't know, 1/4 acre at the most. All right, so this right here is the next plot. This is that one that wraps around some of these trees back there. Believe it or not, the buckwheat's like waist high in this shade here. We just had a ton of moisture. Where last year I had the same thing here, buckwheat and then no-till brassicas, and then this walnut and these other box elders and stuff are really sucking a lot of the nutrients. And believe it or not, the brassicas, they do grow underneath this walnut. I mean, obviously not as good as they would out there. Out here in the full sun, the buckwheat's probably actually a little bit over waist high. And then I got a little bit of corn for a screening wall, and then buckwheat on the other side of the corn over there, like a little circle of it. And same thing, there's like hardly any weeds. The deer got a little trail right through here. Hardly any weeds in any of this stuff. This has been a pretty weedy plot in the past. Man, there's just tons of deer running through here. And then buckwheat on this side, full sun, and then it goes back there and wraps around those trees. here's the final spot. This is just basically a quarter of this field. I divided this field with corn walls as like a big plus sign, and the other 3 quadrants are all soybeans. This again is another really weedy spot. In the past, or before I planted the buckwheat, this whole area was just coming in with solid broadleafs, lamb's quarters, water hemp, pigweeds. It's amazing how fast the buckwheat can get established and take over. I mean, there was weeds germinating in here a little bit after the buckwheat was up, and they're still in here, but they're down there a ways. Like right here's one, but most of it's like so small. Again, this is another probably, I don't know, 1/5 of an acre at most. It's not much. One last look at the seed spacing before I crush it all. Right here's one. Actually 2, that's a tillage radish, that brown thing. Another one there. Another one right here, about a foot away. So this is good. I mean, it's not, I seeded this one a little bit extra light just to see the difference. But still, it's not much lighter because there's one right there, one right there, one right here. I mean, brassicas will do fine at 1 seed per square foot. I mean, they'll get to their absolute maximum full potential. But generally, a little bit like 2 seeds per square foot ain't bad either. But once you start, you know, really 4 or 5 seeds per square foot, that's a little bit too thick in my opinion. Because then they're just not going to get, you know, knee high and have real thick stems. And I know people they want them young and tender, but you want these things as big as you can get them because you want to keep attracting these deer as long into the late season as possible and feeding as much volume and growing as much volume as you can on these small plots. I mean, if this was all shin high compared to knee high, it's not half the volume. It's like 3 or 4 times less the volume. Anyways, I'll just crush this, and I got a lot of spraying to do. Like I said, probably a total of about 1 acre. I'm not exactly sure. That I just planted today amongst a bunch of different little plots. So yeah, it should be interesting to see how this turns out. It should turn out good. Hopefully we don't get a dry spell in August, because if we do, then brassicas really suffer on them dry spells, especially when they're little. Well, first update on these brassicas. I'm gonna try and keep this first update under 10 minutes for all the combined plots. So I'm gonna go kind of quick here. There definitely is more weeds in here than I would like. Mainly just water hemp. Some of these survived. Some of them are new ones that are coming up. You can see I just fertilized with urea. I don't do this every year, but probably every other year. I don't think I fertilized last year. I don't think I top side dressed with urea on my brassicas last year, but doing it this year because this whole plot didn't turn out as good as I was hoping, because I had all these soybeans and you can see how thin they were. So I got brassicas spread throughout all these soybeans, and I did spread urea in here too, a little bit lighter. You can see there is urea in here, but not as thick as where it was solid brassica, because the brassicas are definitely thicker here. They're going to be sucking up more nutrients. I'm going to head up to the point here, and then I'm going to go that way, and I'll show you that plot and the other long skinny plot by the ditch there. And some of these spots in this plot look really good. There's like just back that way, there's hardly any weeds. And you see all these weeds are not going to get too much bigger. I mean, this is already going out to seed. It's probably not going to get much taller. These are just going to get a couple inches taller, throw a seed head on. These lamb's quarters plants will probably get shin to knee high. These brassicas will all hopefully be shin to knee high in here, taller than a lot of these weeds. Like, this is going to be done growing here. It's got a seed head on it. The brassicas should get up and above that. And you can see this is an area where the soybeans were extremely thin. I just terminated pretty much all of them right here, and it was just bare dirt. Ran the cultipacker over here just like I did with the buckwheat, and I got definitely better germination on this looser, open, exposed ground, because this is just really sandy loam. And that cultipacker actually worked in a lot of the seed to like 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch deep, like just worked it. There's hardly any seed exposed on top. You can see where the buckwheat is. Whenever you do no-till, you always get lower germination rates. And I seeded all this the same, but this, in my opinion, is probably in some areas in here too thick. Like right here, they're already bunching together, where you kind of want to give them more space like this. But it does, I mean, look how many more weeds are in here too, because it wasn't no-till. And you get over here, there definitely is less weeds, but there's definitely not none either. So some other spots going that way, I'll show you. I got one plot that's really weed free. All right, so heading that way is where I just was. I got this nice little brassica lane between the corn and the soybeans, and it heads up towards this other little plot over here. This, as you can see, was soybeans originally, but I seeded these brassicas in about like 3 weeks before I did the rest of this field. You can see how much bigger they are. I mean, these are planted probably late June, so obviously a little early, but big deal. It's just a little spot. If they get too woody, it don't matter. They're still going to eat them later in the year. And these ones probably will catch up, because I mean, the brassicas, no matter when you plant them, they seem to top out at like knee to waist high, somewhere in that thigh range, if they got plenty of nutrients, plenty of space to grow. And I would assume that a lot of these smaller ones will catch up in total size, you know, a month and a half from now, when pretty much the growing season's coming to an end. Still a couple soybeans in here too, but not nearly as thick as what I wanted. And this is that really weed-free plot. This was mature buckthorn like this 2 years ago, and then this was part of that area that we had mowed down, and this was all solid wood chips here. I burnt off all them wood chips, and I think it just fried all the weed seed and all the seed in general in the ground. And this is the second year for this edge up here, but back there by that hybrid poplar, I've been planting that for a number of years too. I mean, there is weeds starting to get in here. I guess this area is kind of bad, actually. There's a couple water hemps in here. But overall, this is still one of my most weed-free plots. It's looking really good. Probably a little thicker than what I wanted. Some of these plots ended up a little thicker. Some of them are a little thinner. And some areas are just about right. Like this is probably just about right here. Plenty of room for them to grow in. And then you get in areas like this, you got some weed competition. Brassicas are probably a little thicker than they should be. So come to the end of the year, like this plant right here is obviously smaller than some of these, but by the end of the year, this plant could be just as big, if not bigger, than some of these ones in here that are bigger right now, that are more crowded. You can see all these old stumps in here, just all the mature buckthorn just 2 years ago. So yeah, it's looking really good. I'm gonna take you over to that Ditchbank plot over there. That's probably my worst looking one right now. All right, so here is the Ditchbank plot. I said this is probably the worst looking plot, but this is the area right here in the beginning. It's probably the best looking area of this plot. For some reason, there's just less weeds coming in here. Almost none. There's one water hemp weed right there. And there was a really weedy patch right here in the buckwheat. You can see there was some grasses here that are dead completely. And then right here was almost solid water hemp. For some reason, the buckwheat didn't come in good there. And that's pretty much all survived. This is all pretty good up until you get to this corner up here where it widens out. For some reason, the past how many years, ever since I started planting this plot here, this has always just been a really weedy stretch right here from here all the way around this bend. This is pretty much all stuff that probably survived the spraying, and then here's a whole bunch of little lamb's quarters that are just popping up after I crushed all this and, you know, got the sunlight down to the dirt. Now there's a whole bunch of new weeds that are germinating. Here's all the old buckwheat stalks. I mean, there's brassicas in here, but they're barely as big as the weeds, so it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. This will be pretty weedy, but as soon as we get a first frost, it'll kill off all these weeds, and it'll really help clean up this plot, make it look a lot better than what it does now. There will be definitely brassicas in here for these deer, but they just, for some reason, they're almost planted too thin too, and like right here, there's no weeds at all coming up, but the brassicas look pretty weak right here too. So it's just, we're gonna be getting a really good, like 100% chance of rain tomorrow. They're saying 1 to 2 inches, so it's a perfect day to get out here and broadcast urea on all my brassicas. All right, I'm gonna take you over to that side of the property and show you the brassicas I got over there. All right, so here's the black walnut food plot. This is that plot that wraps around that big tree over there. Wraps around a couple big trees back there. Over the years, again, this has been another pretty relatively weedy plot. It's actually looking pretty good this year on the amount of weeds. I got this plot seeded probably a little thinner than what I should. Not much water hemp coming in, but a lot of Piers Lane. This stuff doesn't get that big, so it shouldn't affect the brassicas too much. Right now, this actually looks like a pretty weak looking brassica plot, but come by the end of the year, a lot of these brassicas in here should be thigh high because they've got tons and tons of room to grow and easily a month and a half of growth left. The first month of growth is always by far the slowest for brassicas, especially when you no-till them. They always seem to take off a little faster when you till the ground. The ground's looser. I don't know if they can just root and start to grow faster. This area, like I said, was pretty thin, but you get around to the back side here, I actually got areas that are too thick. The deer got this little nice, perfect little trail busted through the corn right here. This area looks relatively the same as the other area just out there, maybe a hair better. I'm not sure if I just cranked out more seed in these shady spots. It could be the case because I know these brassicas, they never really do the best. They don't get nearly as big. And in shady areas, sometimes you can actually get away with broadcasting more seed because these plants won't get as big and they won't choke out each other as bad. That could be the case, but then again, it is a lot darker, higher moisture ground back here, so whatever I did throw on the ground probably did come up because it's just a lot wetter in here. And typically there's been a lot of weed issues back here too, but I guess there is quite a few weeds in here, but there is quite a few brassicas in here too. So I'm not, this isn't too bad. It's not perfect either, but it should turn out to be a lot of deer food for this winter. I mean, look at this. These things are really slowing. I mean, you can't really expect much of a food plot right underneath these trees. But you get out here, it looks a little bit better. Every year, these trees are just, you know, sucking more nutrients and shading out these plots. I should probably cut down this box elder here eventually. Anyways, I'll take you over to my last little spot in that food plot over there closer to the hill. All right, so this is the final plot. Again, this one is probably a little bit underseeded. So you can see I got plenty of room between these plants. But like I've always said, I'd rather have a plot be too thin than too thick. This field in general, the rest of the field is primarily soybeans and a little bit of corn for screening, as you can see. Most of this plot is going to get seeded with rye, and I'm going to plan on doing no-till beans and a little bit of no-till corn in here. And the areas that I plan on doing brassicas in here next year, I will just spray off the rye early in the spring in that brassica section, till it up like I normally do, plant the buckwheat, and then no-till again. Same as the rest of the plots. There is some weeds in here, but you can see any weed that's going out to seed like that is not going to get much taller, if any taller. So these brassicas, it's like this is all just about to go out to seed right here. This is one that survived. See how big the stem is? And then we got all these little ones in here that just popped up too. But these brassicas should be able to push their way and get up and above these weeds, because believe it or not, these brassicas should be knee to thigh high a month and a half from now. And all this purslane, this low crawling weed, that does not get much taller than 3 inches. It just crawls around on the ground. These brassicas will be up and above that. Like right here, man, I'm not seeing hardly anything. I probably definitely could have threw out some more seed in this plot. On this edge, I specifically seeded a little bit heavier because it's shaded. And you can definitely see there's more plants coming up over here and a lot less weeds just because it's in the shade here. But in all reality, that would be too thick if it was out there in the full sun. Like, see how thick this is? But in this shady spot, I should be able to get away with having a little thicker. Anyways, it's, like I said, not perfect brassica plot, but it's going to turn out and it's going to be a heck of a lot of food out here eventually. Not right now. Looks pretty pathetic right now. That's the way all these no-till plots in the last couple years I've planted into the buckwheat. They look pretty poor the first month, but man, the second month they're established and starting to grow. Now that I got all this urea down and we're going to be getting good rains, they should really pop here in the next month. So I'll see you probably a couple weeks, maybe even a month from now, depending on when I'll get this video out. But yeah, it should turn out. I'm not getting worried at all. So yeah, I'll see you then. All right, so here's that little plot next to the bigger 1 acre field. I usually call this one the water hole plot. We got a little water hole back there, but anyways, this is probably some of my best looking brassicas anywhere this year. And this used to be just solid buckthorn like this, literally 3 years ago now, I think. This will be the second or third year I've planted this whole section right here, and there's just never been, you know, a chance for the weed seed to get built up and established. It's just been buckthorn shaded dirt for so many years. I hardly ever have any issues with weeds in this section. Like, look at even right here, this bare spot where there's no canopy closure right here. I mean, the weeds are very minimal. This is just like wild strawberry. I mean, that's like, there's no water hemp, one lamb's quarters weed right here. These brassicas are really coming in good. Got real good, seeding rate. Not too thick, not too thin. Everything looks, really, really well established. A little bit of deer browse right there on the tillage radish. My original plan was to overseed this with rye too, but I don't even know if I'm gonna waste the seed. I mean, I guess I could. It's just like a 50 yard by 10 yard spot. It's not that big, because I wanted to do like no-till corn into here next year, or something other than brassica, maybe try soybeans here. But I am gonna broadcast rye throughout most of that plot and have a lot of soybeans out there again too. So I'm gonna take you out and we'll take a look at these brassica trails. This was the area of soybeans. I seeded these brassicas like late June, obviously really early for brassica. And look at how phenomenal they look. The rest of the plot going that way is all soybeans that I seeded brassicas in like mid-July. And then obviously down here's, these soybeans were super thin. That's why the brassicas look as good as they do. You can't even see the beans in there because they've already turned and dropped leaves. And then right here's where I had the buckwheat and then the brassica trails that you saw in this video. Some of these areas down here, the seed got washed. The seed from up there in the soybeans on the bare dirt got washed down here, so it got a pretty high seeding rate in some of these areas. And there's just quite a bit of tillage radish ripped up right here. That almost looks like it could be from raccoons or something gnawing at it. I don't know. So right here, it's obviously too thick. A lot of this is tillage radish right here. And going up this way is all the soybeans that I overseeded the brassicas into. Probably the best area of this is just up this way. It turned out pretty good up this way. This whole plot has ended up being primarily brassica, even though I originally planted soybeans throughout most of it. It just looks like a solid brassica plot now. But it does look pretty good. And right here we have a little bit more weed problems. The water hemp, but the brassicas are really big in here too. And they're not done yet. I mean, if we get another rain or two, they should continue to grow for the next 3 weeks. I mean, usually up till about middle of October, we can get growth out of these brassicas. Got some basically almost softball, good baseball sized turnips in here. I haven't looked around too much. You can't really see them too good right now. All right, here's the Ditchbank plot, that long, narrow trail. This plot always dries up real fast, and it's starting to get pretty dry here. This front section right here looks the best. There's just the least amount of weeds right here. These brassicas are already knee-high. But you can see over here where they're getting a little more sunlight. I mean, I'm sure I threw a bunch of seed right here too along this edge, but just it never does the best right here. Next to all this buckthorn or whatever. Just this north is that way, so this doesn't get any shade right here. It's like basically noon right now. This should all be full sun along this edge, but it never grows good along the edge and it always dries up. Actually, closer to all these weeds, it actually looks really good. Look at how good it looks right there. And then up here along this corner where it widens out, ever since I've started planting this plot here, this has always been a real weed problem issue up here. There's always been lots of weeds. And I would assume some of these survived the crushing and spraying when I cultipacked and sprayed the day we planted. And some of this might have sprouted up and grew back since then. And you can see the brassicas are just really suffering up here in this full sun. We haven't had rain for probably close to 3 weeks now, and the whole next week, no rain. So this is gonna get pretty dry here. It already looks dry. It shouldn't kill them. I mean, I guess if you got 3 more weeks without rain, then it probably almost could kill them, but we'll see. I've never had brassicas die. Even when they're smaller than this, they can shrivel up and look pretty bad. My plan was to come in here and put some rye down for sure in this plot, because there is some bare spots, and I wanted to do like no-till corn or something into the rye here next year. So whenever we get a chance of rain coming, this will be one of the plots that I come in and overseed rye throughout the whole thing. But some of these areas look pretty good, like the rye. You broadcast rye into these brassicas right here. I mean, you might get some of it to grow, but it'll just get shaded out because these brassicas are, you know, they're going to stay green the whole year, where a lot of those weeds will die off in the next couple weeks here, and that area the rye will come in real good. All right, so here's the black walnut food plot. These brassicas were pretty thin. They're starting to fill in now. Probably out of all the areas I did that day, this plot probably was the thinnest for some reason. I don't know if I just didn't spread enough seed or what, but it's going to turn out, and I plan on overseeding all this with rye. And there already is some browse on this tillage radish in here, right here. Most of this is all the winter greens, these big green leafy kale plants. And that blend does have a couple purple top turnips. Surprisingly, the weeds didn't come in that bad. Usually there's more water hemp in this plot. It actually turned out pretty good. The weeds aren't really gonna get that big. I mean, they're all going out to seed already. So not quite as good as the other plots I just showed you, but it's still gonna turn out good and provide definitely some winter food here. This is the thinnest spot. I'll take you up around them trees over there. It actually looks quite a bit better over there. Definitely pretty much full canopy closure on the Brassica. I must have put in more seed over there or something. This is all pretty much full sun right here, but you get back around these trees, there's definitely, you know, it gets definitely more shade back there, and it actually looks pretty good still. And this is a big black walnut right here. I'll show you. I can't believe, I mean, the corn got almost full height right underneath that, and the brassicas are doing just fine. But yeah, this is looking pretty good back here. There's hardly any weeds coming in, or the weeds that are here. I mean, the brassicas are really coming in good back here. Now this is where it starts to get real shady right here. But surprisingly, these brassicas are still doing pretty good. They actually look better here in the shade because they're not getting all dried up in the full sun. Back here it gets pretty weedy and not quite as high of a seed rate, but like I said, I plan on doing a lot of winter rye in all this back here, especially where all this corn is, because there's nothing in there now. So yeah, I'll take you to the next little spot right over there by the hill. All right, so here's the final spot of all these no-till brassicas. This is, again, probably one of the lower, lightly seeded spots. Didn't really get the best take. I don't know if I just didn't crank out enough seed or if this is just what came up, but there's been a lot of gaps in this plot. But they're starting to fill in now. It's starting to look better. This will be one of the plots that I for sure seed rye into, because there's plenty of room to get some rye in here. Unlike some of the other brassica plots that came in real nice and thick, I don't think the rye is going to do that good, even if I do seed it in. But yeah, we got a solid 3 weeks of growth yet. So these brassicas should get a little bit bigger yet. These weeds are all done growing. You see they're putting on literally millions of seed. So the weeds aren't going to get much bigger. The brassicas should get a little bit bigger. You can see I saw a little bit of, yeah, right here's a tillage radish. They completely ripped out. So they're starting on some of the tillage radishes. Some browse right here too. But yeah, generally from my experience, they don't really eat on this forage rape. At least the deer in this area, they don't eat on any of this stuff until mid to late October. So yeah, it's looking all right. Like I've always said in the past, I would much rather have my brassicas too thin than too thick. Obviously all these weeds in here isn't really ideal, but this is about, you know, perfect spacing right here. The brassicas are pretty much canopying over everything, looking good. Well, that's gonna pretty much wrap up all my food plot videos for the year. I might have one other brassica video coming out from a different property, but that wraps up all the brassica and all the corn and bean videos here. I'll have winter updates of all these plots like usual. And yeah, see you in the next one, I guess.